Okay, so today we're going to be practicing and using 3 different types of proofs. When we're writing a proof, we are going to be using all 3 different formats. We've got paragraph proofs, flowchart, and 2-column proofs. Okay, and then we're also going to be writing proofs using the fact that corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent, otherwise known as CPCTC. Okay. So when we write a flowchart proof, it's several steps. First, the diagram, and then the given information and the proof statement are added to the flowchart. Then we take the information that can be justified using a valid reason and add that in logical sequence. And then finally, the statement to be proved is validated through our flowchart. Okay. Now we're going to actually use practice using all 3 of those. Okay. So we've got our given and our proof, and first, number 1, we're going to write our paragraph proof. So number 1 is a paragraph proof. Okay. A paragraph proof is just like it sounds. We're writing everything in sentences and writing an actual paragraph out. Okay. So to start, what I like to do with all proofs, no matter when I'm doing it, is label our picture before we even get started on the paragraph proof. So I know that MA is parallel to HT, and it also tells me that angle MAT here is congruent to angle THM. Okay, so now I've labeled my image. Now I can get started on the actual paragraph proof. Okay, so first thing is I know that MA, segment MA, is parallel to segment HT. Therefore, so we know that angle MTH is congruent to angle TMA. Why? Because they are alternate interior angles of parallel lines. Because I know that they're congruent now, I want to make sure that I'm still labeling my picture. So MTH is congruent to angle TMA, which is right there. Okay, and that's the end of the sentence. Next, we have another given. So angle MAT is congruent to angle THM. And that is given. Alright, so now I've used up my givens. I can't really prove anything else with this last given I used. But looking at the diagram, I can see that MT is going to be congruent to itself. So the next part, I can say, from looking at the diagram, or just from the diagram, MT is congruent to segment TM. Because it's a side in both the triangles. It shares the sides. Now, since I've labeled my image, I can see that these 2 triangles are going to be congruent because of angle, angle, side. So I can write that in my paragraph. Therefore, triangle MAT is congruent to triangle THM by angle, side, congruent. And now that's not what I was aiming to prove. I'm trying to prove segment MH is congruent to segment AT. But now I do know that that's true because of corresponding parts. So since the triangles are congruent, I now know that segment MH is congruent to segment AT because corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. And that is my paragraph proof. So there can be a little bit of variation within this paragraph proof, but the gist of it is going to be the same. You're going to need all those different pieces of information to be able to prove that segment MH is congruent to segment AT. Now I want you to go ahead and pause the video and try and fill out the flowchart proof from item 1. So it's going to be similar to your paragraph proof, and you're going to be able to use your paragraph proof and the way that it's organized to be able to fill in your flowchart proof. So go ahead and pause the video at this time. So using this paragraph proof, we can help ourselves fill out the flowchart proof. So the first statement for our flowchart proof is always going to be a given. Okay, I'm going to write this one in blue. So we've got our first given, which is segment MA is parallel to segment HT, and we always write the reason underneath, and the reason is given. Now using this information, just like we did in our paragraph proof, we can say that angle MTH is congruent to angle TMA because if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, the alternate interior angles are congruent. And we write that in our reason. Okay. If two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, the alternate interior angles are congruent. Okay, so we've used our first given, and now we're going to move on to our second given, which is angle MAT is congruent to angle THM. And the reason, which we write underneath, is given. Unlike the first given, we're not using that to prove anything else. So then we move on to our next piece of information that was in our paragraph proof, which is segment MT is congruent to segment TM. And unlike in our paragraph proof, since we said it's the side is shared by both triangles, on here we're going to give the property, which is the reflexive property. Okay? So we're using this information that we determined through the paragraph proof to put it into our flowchart. And then using these three pieces of information, we can flow to our next piece, which is that triangle MAT is congruent to triangle THM. And our reason is the angle-side postulate. We're not quite done because we are trying to prove that segment MH is congruent to segment AT, and we do know this to be true because of CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Okay, go ahead and turn the page. We're now on page 176, so I forgot to tell you at the beginning. Hopefully you figured it out. Lesson 12.2. Again, I'd like you to pause the video here and try and fill out our two-column proof for the same proof in item 1. It's the same exact problem. It's just we're displaying the information in a two-column proof now instead of a paragraph proof or a flowchart proof. Alright, so pause the video here. Alright, so hopefully you've tried that. Our first statement is always going to be our given. We'll go through it together. So segment MA is parallel to segment TH, and the reason is given. Again, just like in our flowchart, we use this information to be able to say that angle MTH is congruent to angle TMA. And how do we know that? Because if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, the alternate interior angles are congruent. That's my shorthand. Okay, and then number 3 is our second given. Angle MAT, angle MAT, is congruent to angle THM. And how do we know that? Our reason is given. Next we have segment MT is congruent to segment TM. And again, that's due to the reflexive property. So now we can prove in statement 5 that triangle MAT is congruent to triangle THM because of the angle psi postulate or congruence. Which leads us to 6, which is our objective to prove that segment MH is congruent to segment AT. And how do we know that? Because the corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. This is where the video is going to end, and I will begin again on the next